Hey, everybody. Welcome to What Fresh Hell, Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. This is Amy.
And this is Margaret. And today we're talking about our time, Amy.
Okay.
How we're managing it, how much of it we have. Do we have more than we think? Let's figure it out.
We're going to solve it today. We're going to figure out
solve
how
it.
to have more time, all the time we need to do what we need to do.
We got it.
All right, great.
But first, we have a mailbag.
Our Facebook group, by the way, is facebook.com/groups/whatfreshhellcast. And it's thousands and thousands of listeners of this podcast talking about the little things like this feedback from Jenna. Jenna says, "Did I just hear Amy and Margaret on today's episode, both of whom describe themselves as being of Irish Catholic descent, true, say they don't like French fries to taste like potatoes? And did Amy go so far as to say the potatoes aren't even that good? I have never so quickly gasped aloud at a podcast, knowing full well the hosts can't hear me." Oh, we can hear you, Jenna. We hear you loud and clear.
We heard that gasp. There was it was like a Marvel movie. There's been a disruption in the space-time continuum.
Did you hear that?
It's Jenna gasping at our lack of love for potatoes.
I don't know. I stand behind French fries should taste like salty fat sticks. They should not taste potatoey at all. That's my favorite kind of French fry. Do potatoes taste good ever? I mean, sometimes. Sometimes.
I like potatoes to taste, and I believe this is absolutely well within my rights as an Irish Catholic. I like potatoes to taste like a salt and fat delivery system and not like a potato.
Exactly.
Totally
we don't agree on much, but that's like 100% how French fries should be.
100% aligned.
Are potatoes not that good? I mean, I'm eating less and less of them. I mean, I know my people lived on them for hundreds of years, but turns out they're not that great for you, really.
But they're just like, there's a lot of foods like this. There's grits. There's lots of things. They're just a
Polenta?
salt, cream, and fat delivery. Polenta. It's like we have this odd tuber or grain and we want it to taste good, but it essentially doesn't taste good. I mean, we're not pulling potatoes out of the ground and snacking on them. Why? Because they're potatoes. You have to lard them up.
Do a lot. Yeah.
Salt the heck out of these things. And then you've got something edible. And that is well within the traditions of our people. And Jenna, I mean, I love you. You're a Facebook fan and a listener and huge respect, but I will not back down from this hill that is potatoes should taste like salty lard.
No, French fries should taste like salty
All
lard.
Potatoes. I'm sorry. I'm taking it another step.
Even mashed potatoes should just not really taste potatoey.
Even a potato should taste like salted lard. Like I go to Outback, I get the sour cream, the butter, the salt. It's the potato itself has no value. It is only a delivery system for butter and salt.
Okay.
Hear me now, believe me later.
Come at us. Come at us in the Facebook group.
Come at us, Facebook group. Amy, today we're talking about time. You found an article about time affluence.
Uh-huh.
Yale University psychology professor Laurie Santos has been creating all sorts of podcast content about time affluence.
She's the host of the Happiness Lab podcast.
Correct. The Happiness Lab started as a Yale University course. In fact, the most popular course in the university's history.
Right.
And one of the keys, she suggests, to happiness is having time affluence. It is a term that refers to the idea that time, like money, can be saved, spent, and wasted. And that you should approach time with this idea that you are searching for time affluence. It's the opposite of time famine. Time famine is the feeling that you don't have enough time.
But I don't have enough time. So time affluence is like a state of mind. It's a mindset. Like I'm just going to tell myself I have time.
No, you're not just going to. There is a lot of like, check your story in this work, which I think is kind of the basis of it. But it's about approaching time with this idea of there is time affluence, there is time poverty, there is time famine, and figuring out where you are in that and where the levers are that you can move to give yourself more time.
So, we're friends with Laura Vanderkam, and she does time management is her thing. And she would say you have more time than you think you do. That's her thing. But and that, like, you have more time than you think you do. If you want to run a marathon, just get up earlier and do it. Or like if you want to write a book, just get up every morning and write a book. That you have the time to do the things you want to do if you work even harder, right, and get up earlier and sleep less, it seems to me. And that's not what time affluence is, right? Time affluence is like, you only think you don't have enough time, you do have enough time. I need to hear more. Tell me more about time affluence.
I think let's talk about people talking about time, because there's lots, and time affluence is not unique to Laurie Santos. There's a lot of people sort of talking about this idea. There's a TED Talk online by a guy named Jermaine Archer, who happens to be a friend of mine, who made this TED Talk as part of TEDx from Sing Sing. So he was actually serving time at the time of doing this TED Talk, and talking about how his approach to time while incarcerated really changed his life. That like he started to realize that everybody, incarcerated people and Bill Gates, are given the same 24 hours a day, that it is a resource that is the same for everybody. But he had a kind of personal revolution about how to spend his time. He first approached it in this TED Talk. He talks about by trying to organize his time, making lists and like putting up on his cell wall, like the color coded Post-its, and this is what I'm going to get done. And that for him, what he needed was not a to-do list, but a can't-do list. So that for him, like in the yard, he's playing dominoes a couple hours a day. He's hanging out with his friends a couple of hours a day. And that for him, time becomes very importantly like can't-do lists. Like I'm going to stop dominoes for a year. I'm going to stop and I'm going to find time. And he ends up teaching himself several different languages, and that it's just a kind of simple etude on time is how you spend it, which doesn't seem like a very revolutionary concept. And you could argue, and we'll talk a lot about how this is different for people in different areas, that maybe people who are incarcerated have all the time in the world.
Right. That's what it feels like. You're coming at it like, oh, what am I going to do with all this time? But you can waste time in that situation as well, I guess.
But I think starting from the point of view of like, how am I spending my time? How do I want to spend my time? Or like, what about how I'm spending my time is getting in the way of things that I want to accomplish is a useful starting point. Like this is kind of watch your story. And it's also Laura Vandekamp's like, you have more time than you think. It's not necessarily like I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. to exercise, because from me, that's never going to happen. Like I have a million times thought if I just got up early, I could exercise every day. It's not happening in my life. For whatever reason, that is not available to me because it is not appealing to me.
If it's not important, it's not important enough to you, maybe, right? That if it were truly important, then you would not get up earlier, but you would do that thing. Although maybe not. Like time affluence, I'm looking at this quote here from Laurie Santos. Embracing time affluence means giving yourself the freedom to pursue leisure and personally meaningful things, meaningful activities, which I get. That's important for your happiness and longevity. Connect with friends. I don't have time to connect with friends right now because I'm in a busy season. But you need to connect with friends in order to have happiness and longevity. So prioritize those things. But are they arguing that by relaxing and just like if you want to work out, work out. If you want to see friends, like who cares that you have 5 things you have to do today? Just go. That you will feel more relaxed about time?
I think it is the fundamental idea that time affluence is valuable. This is like the conversation we had about kin keeping. Like if everyone's laughing at you setting up the train on Christmas and no one wants to help, like understanding the value of kin keeping, like understanding the value of doing the Christmas decorations for yourself, then puts it at a center and like, okay, I've tried the solution of waking up 4 hours earlier, and that is just congenitally not available to me because I don't want to be tired all day, or I don't sleep at night if I know the alarm's going to go off at 5, whatever's happening, figuring out like time affluence is a value of mine. So now how are we going to get there?
And time affluence as a value means feeling relaxed about having enough time to do the things you need to do?
Whether or not you feel relaxed about it, finding a way to carve out time where you end up doing the things you want to do versus just being on the hamster wheel of life and like keeping going all the time.
So time is a construct, and you can choose to approach your day without the feeling of panic and make time for what's meaningful for you.
Yes. And that, I mean, we're going to get into a lot of pieces of this about like why hasn't technology, which has like stopped us from like washing clothes against a rock and we just like drop it in the laundry and walk away. Like, why do we end up in time poverty regardless of our circumstances?
Okay.
Here's a 2010 study. 9% of adults say they have time on their hands quite often. 9%. Very, very few adults. 46% say they have free time now and then. 45% almost never have free time. Where do you put yourself on those answers?
I'm not. It would depend on the day whether I answer the now and then or the almost never. But it's because I'm trying to like, do too many things at once, I suppose. That being said, like I go to yoga, like that's important to me, and so I schedule it. But I wouldn't call that free time. I'd call
that
free
time. Yoga. That is not free time.
Did I have like free time? I took a 2-hour car ride last night. My husband was driving. I was sitting in the back seat while we were listening to a podcast. I was buying, air tickets and hotel for a trip that we're doing in 2 weeks because I have to get it done. So that was free time that I choose to spend doing like shallow work while we all listen to a podcast.
Right.
But it doesn't feel like free time.
It's not free time. Free time is leisure time. Free time is not
it's
like
doing a puzzle.
Yeah. And it's interesting how other things have crept into our free time, like screen time and watching TV and other things that used to not exist. And now they're sort of our free time. But It's not quite the same as having like time where you have time to do whatever you want to do. Time poverty has been identified. This is why we care about this. From Forbes magazine, this is the key to achieving time affluence by, I love this name, Barnaby Lashbrook. Doesn't it sound like a suitor from like a 16th century novel?
It sounds like
Barnaby Lashbrook.
Oh my gosh, that Netflix show. I mean, everybody's gonna be yelling at their phones right now.
Bridgerton. Yeah, he's Barnaby Lashbrook.
It's like a Bridgerton name generator. Spit this out.
Correct, Barnaby Lashbrook. Time poverty is endemic. A 2015 poll by Gallup found that 61% of working Americans reported not having enough time to do what they wanted.
And especially women, because we did a whole episode on that free time study that women do twice as much household work as men, whether or not they're parents, whether or not they're married. We just do more work, and there is all this work to do. So I'm still a little bit stuck on like, yeah, but like the plane tickets do have to be bought, and the dishwasher does have to be loaded. And so is it like it can wait? Is it like just relax and just put your feet up and you'll have time to do it tomorrow? Does that lead to, I mean, I understand relaxation is nice, but are they saying time affluence means if you give yourself more time to relax, your to-do list will get shorter too, or that you'll have enough time to do the things you need to do?
No, it's that the overall picture, let me lay this on you and see if it unlocks something, because I thought it was really interesting. There is an economic study that is, I think we've talked about on the podcast, which is the marginal propensity to consume, an economic concept that indicates that as income rises, the percentage of each additional dollar spent on consumption tends to increase. So like the more you have, the more you spend.
Mm-hmm.
And that there are similar studies that humans commonly associate value and scarcity. It is a widely understood principle that the scarcity of objects enhances their value. And so these studies suggest that when people focus on the value of their time, they experience greater psychological and physiological stress, which really makes sense to me. Like my time becomes more valuable, and therefore the stress associated with my time becomes much more valuable.
Got it. Okay.
And so it's not necessarily prescriptive that we're at. It's just a defining that, like, understanding that being busy and being, the more you value the more you feel time scarcity, the more you kind of fill in the gaps of the time scarcity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess it does. All right. I understand this now. I have a situation I want to throw at you when we come back. So this is what came to mind when you're talking about this is the feeling like you don't have enough time will feed on itself. It's like, I hate like the TSA line at the airport.
Yes.
Right. And I'm always a little anxious to get to the other side of the TSA line. We'll have enough time to walk by my gate, looking at it. There's the gate, right? I'm one of those people. Like, there it is, G18. Okay, now I can go get coffee because I saw it. There it is.
I have established it with my mind.
Right,
now
right.
I can enjoy my snack purchases.
Right, exactly. And I'm going to go get my snack. I'm going to go get coffee and fill up my water bottle. But yeah, I probably have quicker to rage, at the TSA line when it's really long, as an example of something that's taking way too long and wasting my time, quote unquote, and taking way longer than it needs to. That I'm immediately like, yes, like this is my time and it's being wasted right now with me standing in this stupid line, when instead, I guess if I had time affluence, it's like, well, I'm going to have plenty of time to do what I need to do. And so these little wasting of my time doesn't feel so precious and so outrageous.
Yes.
Because it's all good.
Part of that is figuring out, in regards to your time, constants and variables. Okay. And the TSA line is a constant. Like, you don't have any control of how quickly you get through. And in fact, the ineptitude of the other people who don't know to take their laptop out of their bag is costing you valuable time.
Mm-hmm.
But the stress of that situation is to some degree coming from your perception of
precious
this
time.
Could be going faster, this could be going better, this could be more efficient, and that it is it's a fundamental, it's an unchangeable time constraint that you don't have any control over. Mm-hmm. And so those you kind of have to take out. Like, you can't find time affluence on the TSA line. You have no control over how that turns out.
Yeah. I read this recently and it really stuck with me that one of the most lovely forms of self-care is allowing yourself 5 extra minutes to get somewhere. And I thought, well, that is it. Yeah, I don't want to get to the airport with 20 minutes to get through security and the line is 19 and a half minutes long. I want to allowing myself extra time. I guess that's my form of time affluence, that I don't need to spend as little time as possible at gate 8. I want to spend enough time there that I don't feel like I have to rush and I feel like everything's going to be okay and there's enough time to do what I need to do.
You want to find a little time affluence in your travel experience.
Mm-hmm. I do. Whereas maybe somebody I travels with is like, why would you spend
any
30 more seconds in the airport? Right.
I have the exact same travel partner. I'm not married to your husband, but my own David likes to be as close as possible. And we have come to an agreement that for me, the half an hour of relaxing at the gate, making sure the kids are all fed so that we don't have to be like, you have to eat the weird turkey sandwich that they're serving because we're on a 6-hour flight. Like, I value the downtime at the airport. That means getting to the airport for me 2 hours before the flight.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get on a plane 1 hour before the flight? You can.
Usually. until the TSA line is a little long. Right. That's where you get into those situations.
Right. And I think that is a really good metaphor for the big picture of this issue, is making time affluence, knowing what time affluence is, which we talked about in part 1, and then making time affluence of value, because every single study says that time poverty and time famine is bad for you. It's bad for you physiologically. It causes stress and it causes agita, as we say in New York. And it is worth figuring out and making time affluence a priority to remove that stress from your life.
So I'm looking at the definition of time poverty, just as like, okay, I think I know what it is, but looking at it, it's defined as not having enough time due to extra work, burdens, obligations outside of paid work, being the primary caregiver, situations in which you don't have a choice. Overall, time poverty disproportionately impacts women.
Yes.
Mm-hmm, and is linked with lower well-being, physical health, and productivity. So time poverty is actually not having enough time. Like I'm trying to get my master's at night and I can't because my kid is sick and I have 2 jobs. That's time poverty. And time famine is actually you feel like you don't have enough time.
That's right.
That's where I live. Like time poverty is, I'm not in time poverty. I am in time famine. Oh no, how will I get all these things done that I've decided that I need to do?
Right. Time famine is defined as the sense that one has when there is too much to do and not enough available to do it.
Yeah.
So time poverty is
situational. Yeah.
Right. And you may have seasons of true time poverty. You know, when I had 3 little kids who I couldn't do anything except for watch or they would injure themselves, I was in a season of time poverty, and I don't care how many time management books I read, that was not going to get fixed.
That's right.
That's right. So I think distinguishing those levels, and time poverty is you have 45 minutes to make your flight and the TSA line is 47 minutes long. Like you are going to be in that stress reaction, cortisol banging, you don't have enough time to do what you want to do. And I think understanding those buckets is the first step to solving it, because you can say, okay, some time poverty has a solution, right? Maybe getting to the airport 2 hours beforehand. I'm kind of stuck on this metaphor. Mm-hmm. Some time poverty doesn't have a solution. I'm getting my master's when I have 3 young kids at home. This is a season where I'm probably not going to be managing my female friendships very well.
Or even my master's very well, right?
Or even my master. Hopefully my master's enough to pass my courses.
Right.
But understanding which of these things that you're in any given time and keeping a goal of time affluence seems very useful to me.
And again, time affluence isn't so make more time. So be better at doing things and sleep less, and then you'll have all the time you need to do things. It's saying you already have enough time. It's trying to live in that.
I don't know that
space.
That's totally right. I think it's just, right now, we're not prescriptive. It's just a definition. Like, am I in time poverty? I don't have enough time. Okay, and that's the reality of my season. Am I in time famine? I'm constantly feeling like I don't have enough time, but maybe some of these things I think are constants or variables. Or am I in time affluence where I have plenty of time to do the things that are important to me?
And like time affluence to me is I'm on the beach with a book on vacation, right? I achieve it on vacation with the book. And then, my family will be like, when are we going to get lunch? When are we going to do things? And even my spouse wants to like go to the gym and then this and I just want to sit here until I feel like getting up, which might not be for a long time, and not know what time it is. That is such a delicious feeling for me. And I'm realizing, okay, like that's time affluence.
And I think the time affluence has to come closer to you than beach vacation.
Yeah.
Because that is a lot of work for you to get there. Like
that's 6 days a year or whatever.
Finding time affluence every day. That's maybe the hour that I spent like reading my goofy novel, or doing something where it's like, I do have time to do something that's important to me. It doesn't have to occur after I make all the plans and get everyone where they need to be and make sure the camps are all set. Like, it can happen day to day.
Okay.
There's another side of this that I think is going to really light you up. So we understand that people have this feeling of time famine, that they don't feel like they have enough time in a day. But having too much time is also linked to subjective well-being. So this is like optimal push, right? An overabundance of free time may cause added stress due to a sense of lower productivity and wasting time. With too much time on their hands, people feel like they lack a purpose, which translates into less happiness and less life satisfaction.
Yeah.
And similarly, we've talked about this, that there was a study done. It's a lot of this work parallels money and time, and that the optimal amount of money, which you think is $90 billion, when they've done studies, and some of these studies are a little bit outdated, that the optimal amount of money at some point during this study was $95,000. Cassie Mugliner Holmes, I'm probably not saying that correctly. She's a psychologist and professor at UCLA's Anderson School of Management, busy working mother who constantly feels time poor and sets out to investigate. She does a study which looks at the relationship between leisure time and happiness and found that people with less than 2 hours a day of free time had decreased levels of happiness, as I think we've established.
Okay. So because if you're too busy, then you're not as happy as people who are less busy?
Correct.
Okay.
That like there's this less than 2 hours is not enough time of free time. And you're talking about being awake
a day?
for 16. I know. Amy's like, what?
2 hours? I read 3 pages before I fall asleep.
However, she found something similarly counterintuitive, that those with more than 5 hours of free time also had decreased levels of happiness.
Right.
So
you're retired and you don't know what to do with yourself all of a sudden.
Yeah, and you know that feeling of like, I'm always like, if only everyone would leave me alone. And then my kids and my husband go out and I have like 8 hours free and I'm like, I'm miserable. Why is this terrible? And it's because there is an optimal amount of free time, which is somewhere between 2 hours and 5 hours. And so this suggests that the key to becoming time affluent, which she defines as feeling confident that you are able to accomplish everything you want to do, is not having an abundance of time.
Okay. It is a state of mind, but okay, so yes.
Pointing out that in 2018, researchers investigated the exact amount of money it takes to make people happy. And they determined that an income of $95,000, this is 2018, so let's call it 125, 150 now even, was optimal when it came to life satisfaction. And that further increases in income beyond this threshold tended to be associated with reduced life satisfaction and well-being.
I heard about another study recently that showed that people tend to think they need a third more money than they have in order to, relax, in order to have time.
No matter what that amount of money is.
A third more. Right. We're talking, yes, paupers to billionaires. If I only had a third more money in the bank than I had, then I could relax.
Right. No matter what. And these numbers are not super useful because these numbers in a small town are very different than like living in New York City in Times Square. It's like the actual number is not as useful to me as the idea. So her conclusion is being time affluent, like being regular affluent, is less about having an excess of time than actually how you use the limited time that you have.
And is it sort of like paying yourself first? There's a book by Mike Mahalik, I think his name is, called Profit First. And his whole idea is like if you're starting a new company or whatever, pay yourself first because the money, it'll work. Like it'll all fill in around it. You spend what you have. And if you make more, you spend more. So pay yourself first. So is it about having time affluence? It's like, yes, I'm going to from 8 to 10 p.m. every night. Like I am not looking at anything. I am just doing exactly what I want, including talking to my spouse or whatever. You give yourself that time first. And that's how you have more time affluence.
Amy, like we are going to take a break. And in part 3, we're going to talk about systems to achieve time affluence. We'll be right back. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of paths to greater time affluence.
Love it.
Have you heard of the 1-3-5 rule?
Yes, I do stuff like this pretty much every day. I mean, I didn't call it the 1-3-5 rule, but I do something like this. Yes.
Here's the gist. Understand that you can't accomplish an endless number of things every day. Instead, accept the fact that you can reasonably get 1 big thing, 3 medium things, and 5 small things done. Set up your daily to-do list with 9 items that fit in those categories.
Okay.
Useful?
For sure. I learned this from Oliver Berkman's book, 4,000 Weeks. And his whole point of his work is you only have 4,000 weeks in your life. Engage with that limit, the finitude, he calls it, of what you have to do. Like, yeah, you can't do everything you need to do. Like, that's your first, you need to deeply, deeply accept that and stop wrestling with it and just pull out a couple of things and do those things, because you do only have 4,000 weeks. So stop trying to fit 10,000 hours into each day and then be mad at yourself. So this helps me, yes, to say I'm going to do these things today. And if I did them, you win and you can, watch TV.
Yeah, I think it's really, in reading all of this stuff and thinking about it, it's figuring out what time scarcity is absolute in your life and what has methods to fix it. And I think that the idea of saying, like, I'm going to organize my days by what I can do. And I also like the can't do list part of it, because Laura Vanderkamp talks about, and we know her and have been with her. She keeps track of her day in 12-minute increments or something,
small increments,
very small
for years. Yeah.
She's been doing it for years. And it's not something that I practice, and it's not an appealing practice to me, but I think that it's really looking at your time. That I know for myself, I have a huge tendency to be like, I'm so busy, I can't possibly do everything. We particularly today, we have a very busy day. Amy and we have a bunch of recordings and a bunch of things going on. And I kind of woke up this morning in a panic, like, well, I won't be able to go to the gym, and I want this. And I kind of spent some time writing out my day. And I'm like, I actually will feel a million times better if I go to the gym. And so I'm doing that. I'm going to start the day. But my mind was telling me, like, you don't have time to do that. And as I break down the day, it's just watching the story of, like, I have lots to do today. It's scheduled out. But if I write my day out and I say, like, I know I'm going to feel better if I start the day at the gym, I'll figure out how to do that.
I do this every morning. I mean, my calendar these days, especially because we do so many things together, and even with third parties, my calendar is like on my phone, on my computer. It's not on paper. But I do get up every morning and I actually write out on a day planner. I copy it down. Okay, 9 o'clock I'm doing this, 10:15 I have a call, 11 o'clock is a recording. And I go through it so I don't have to wonder what's happening next in my day. I know, and I put in time. Like, I have an appointment today. I put in time in my calendar, like half an hour to get there, half an hour to get back, which is probably a little more than I need.
But that is time affluence right there. What you're doing is time affluence. I'm going to block out, rather than feel that feeling all day of, oh my God, I'm late, and I've got to be at the next thing. And I'm going to block out a half an hour to get there when I need 15 minutes. That is the key to time affluence right there, is saying, I'm not going to let that stress of being late to that appointment be a factor in my day.
And I think Laura Vanderkam would say one of the things from time tracking that has taught her and would teach one who does it is that it teaches you how long things actually take, like the places where you're fooling yourself, right? That I don't know, going to the gym to take an exercise class and coming back, that actually takes an hour and 45 minutes by the time you drive, park, do this, say hi to your friend. Once you see it, it doesn't mean, so do it in an hour and a half, hurry up. It just means that's how long it takes. So stop pretending it doesn't and give yourself that time.
Yes. This is, my beloved could definitely use this lesson when he's like, I'll be home in 5 minutes. I'm like, really? Because your office is 15 minutes away and you haven't begun packing up. So, right. But then you're just layering onto a situation that doesn't need it at all. The idea that I will be there in 5 minutes when that's physically impossible.
Right.
So I will be there in 45 minutes because I'm going to pack up, and then I'm not going to forget things, and I'm not going to have to go back again. Like, giving yourself, putting some reality around how long things take makes a big difference. This we've talked about monotasking.
Oh, yeah. I do all kinds of tricks for this.
Understanding that you cannot actually focus on two things at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
There may be things you can. You maybe can listen to the podcast while booking the tickets,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not really listening to the podcast. So that's fine. Like,
if I'm not going to take a test on it after,
enjoying this, like this is a good time for me to do something I want to do. I find, plane travel is great with this. I can sit on a plane and clean out my email inbox. Like that's a good kind of multitasking. But what I can't do is listen to my child explain what happened to them at school today while composing an email to my boss.
Right.
Those things cannot happen at the same time.
Right.
And what ends up happening in those situations is that both of the situations are much more frustrating because you just haven't committed to either situation.
That's right.
And I think that this, for me, is a big key that, we've talked about this even with raising kids. Putting your work down and playing dollies with your kids for half an hour yields much greater results than for an hour doing your work while being like, yes, your dolly does look sick. Yes, you should get him a thermometer while you're doing it. Like monotask when possible.
Yeah. And I try to do a lot of this because it does make you feel a little bit more relaxed. This thing that you like, I have to do this presentation and I don't have, if you really just sit down and you throw your phone across the room so you can't, your itchy Instagram finger can't kick in and you force yourself to do this one thing, it's surprising how quickly you can move through. Things take less time for me than I think they will.
And I find having something on the calendar, I had to write a eulogy at some point, which is a job I was taking very seriously, as one should. And I felt very intimidated by. And I just was kind of putting it off. I don't have time. I don't have time to concentrate on it. And I finally got to our next point, time blocking. I blocked off, 3 hours of this is what I'm going to work on. It was at the end of the week. And what I found was when I sat down to do it, I had been thinking about it so much that I had so much to say and it came to me. And the Tuesday when I read that poem, I was like, oh, that's perfect for what I want to say about this person. And it was there for me. Once I had the time blocked off, I had a writing teacher who once said taking a walk is writing, but it's like knowing that you have the time blocked off, your brain is working on the problem to some degree in the background. And then when you have free time to really come to the problem, then it's kind of there for you.
Love that. I love this. Lori Santos says unexpected free time, that you call that time confetti and that you celebrate it when it comes up. This is something I can wrap my head around.
Yep. And the idea that free time, like approaching this as a problem to be solved and approaching time affluence as a goal to achieve, seems to me, it flips the script in a way that's really useful to me. That, oh, this free time that's outside of my 1, 3, 5 things that I was going to get done today, or, oh, my meeting canceled. Oh, good. Now I can do this other stuff. It's like, no, that's time confetti. Now I can sit and light the fire and read my book for 45 minutes. Like that's the gift of that thing falling through.
Yeah.
Not that, oh my God, it frees up time to like run on the hamster wheel,
Right.
And it's the old joke saying that like nobody on their deathbed is like, wow, I wish I had spent more time at work. Like nobody,
Right.
And it's the idea of like giving yourself, and so many of these studies reflect, no matter how automated our lives get, no matter how much easier technology makes things for us, the feeling of time scarcity stays with us. And so acknowledging that that feeling is a little bit of a lie that your body is telling you, and that you can't do everything. And so you have to be very active in the choices you make and how you approach the problem of getting things done while keeping the goal of time affluence, which is time that you just get to relax. It's good for your body. It's good for your mind. It's good for your parenting. And so it is worth pursuing as a goal.
This was very useful for me. I understand time affluence now, and I already feel like I know some ways that I can start to find more of it.
Yeah, I am a very gimlet-eyed looker at like productivity stuff. It's just doesn't light me up. I'm like, whatever. But I found this information super useful. It's just one of those things of like, think about it a little bit more and you're going to see your time differently than just being like, I'm just on the hamster wheel forever. And the meme of like, marriage is just saying next week will be calmer until you die. Like, you don't actually have to live that way.
Right. That's right.
Friends, first of all, solved it. You've got all the time in the world.
First of all, solved it.
Second of all, one of the things we've been spending our time on is a YouTube channel where you can see us. You can see clips from the show. You can see additional content. There's lots there. Look up What Fresh Hell Podcast on YouTube, and you will find our smiling faces awaiting you. Follow us there, and you'll get all sorts of fun What Fresh Hell content.
Smash that subscribe button.
Oh, as the kids say.
And and if you have friends who like don't really listen to podcasts, but like send them the YouTube channel. Like these two are funny. You should find time affluence by listening to this episode.
Yeah, spend that time confetti with us.
All right.
You'll love it if you do. And with that, friends, thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
So long.